The siren started 20 minutes ago. The sky has turned that particular shade of green that means something terrible is coming. And I am standing in the backyard of my late grandmother's house, looking at the old storm shelter that I remember from childhood. My name is Isaac Darnell. I am 39 years old, and 6 months ago I inherited this house in Calder, Oklahoma, after my grandmother passed away at the age of 94. I had not visited this town in over a decade, had not seen my grandmother in even longer. The house came to me because there was no one else left to inherit it. I came back to sort through her belongings, to decide whether to sell the property or keep it. I expected the process to be tedious but straightforward. What I did not expect were the rules painted on the wall of the tornado shelter. Rules that I do not remember from childhood. Rules that my grandmother never mentioned. Rules that make no sense for a simple storm cellar, including Rule 3, the one that says, never open the door until the all clear, even if it is your own voice asking. The wind is picking up now. I can see the wall cloud forming in the distance, dark and ominous against the greenish sky. The tornado is coming. I need to go to the shelter. I need to follow the rules. My grandmother's house is a modest 2-story structure on the edge of town, surrounded by flat farmland that stretches to the horizon. She lived here for over 70 years, raised her children here, buried her husband in the cemetery down the road. I left Calder after high school, built a life in Dallas, rarely thought about this small Oklahoma town. My grandmother became a distant figure, someone I called on holidays but never visited. Now she is gone, and the house is mine, and I have spent the past week going through decades of accumulated possessions. Photographs of relatives I barely remember. Keepsakes from a life lived entirely in this one place. The accumulated weight of almost a century. 3 days ago, I decided to check the storm shelter. I remembered my grandmother being meticulous about emergency preparedness, always keeping the cellar stocked and ready. I wanted to see if the supplies were still good, if the structure was still sound. The shelter was exactly as I remembered, built into the ground, accessible by a heavy steel door that lay flat against the earth. My great-grandfather constructed it sometime in the 1950s, after a devastating tornado killed half the town. I descended the steep concrete stairs, pulled the chain on the bare bulb, and looked around. About 12 feet by 12 feet, with a low ceiling and concrete walls. Cots folded against one wall, supplies arranged on metal shelving, canned goods and bottled water and first aid supplies, all old but organized. And on the wall opposite the stairs, painted in faded red letters, the rules. I read them 3 times, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There were 7 rules, written in careful hand. The letters faded to a rusty brown after 7 decades. Rule 1 said, once you are inside the shelter, do not leave until the all clear sounds, no matter what you hear above. Rule 2 said keep the door bolted from the inside. Do not unbolt it for any reason until the all clear. Rule 3 said never open the door until the all clear, even if it is your own voice asking, especially if it is your own voice asking. Rule 4 said, if you hear knocking on the door during the storm, do not respond, do not speak, do not acknowledge the knocking in any way. Rule 5 said, if the light goes out, Stay still and silent until it comes back on. Do not move in the darkness. Rule 6 serem ici. If you hear someone else in the shelter with you, but you entered alone, close your eyes and do not open them until the all clear. Rule 7 said these rules have kept this family safe since 1952. Follow them and you will survive. Break them and you will join the others. I stared at those words for a long time. They sounded like superstition, like folklore that develops in places where storms are deadly and people invent rituals to cope with their helplessness. But there was something about the way they were written that unsettled me. The specificity, the repetition of the all clear, the warning about my own voice. Why would my own voice be asking to open the door? Why would that be something to fear? I meant to research the rules, ask around town about their origin, but I got busy with other tasks, pushed the mystery to the back of my mind. Now the tornado is coming, and there is no more time for research. I pull open the heavy steel door and feel the rush of cool, musty air from below. The concrete stairs are steep and narrow. I descend quickly, flashlight in hand, and reach the bottom just as the first real gust of wind hits the house above. I pull the door shut behind me. The weight is substantial, designed to withstand debris impacts and pressure differentials. I find the bolt and slide it home, sealing myself inside. Rule 2. Keep the door bolted from the inside. The bare bulb casts harsh shadows across the concrete. The cots are still folded against the wall, the supplies still arranged on their shelves, and the rules painted on the wall opposite the stairs, watching me with their faded red letters. I check my phone. No signal, which I expected this far underground. The weather radio my grandmother kept on the shelf is still there, still working. I turn it on and hear the automated voice reciting the tornado warning, advising people to take shelter immediately. The storm is close. I can feel it in the vibration of the concrete, the subtle shift in air pressure that makes my ears pop. The sound of the wind above is growing, a low roar that seems to come from everywhere. I sit down on one of the cots. There is nothing to do now but wait. I look at Rule 3 again. Never open the door until the all clear, even if it is your own voice asking. How could my own voice be asking to open the door when I am inside the shelter? The question nags at me, makes me uneasy in a way I cannot define. Above me, the storm arrives. The sound is unlike anything I remember from childhood, louder and more violent, as if the entire world is being torn apart. The roar of a freight train, the crack of breaking wood, the sharp impacts of debris striking the door. The shelter holds. The walls shake but do not crack. The door rattles in its frame but does not give. My great-grandfather built well. The weather radio cuts to static, then silence. The automated voice is gone, replaced by the roar of the wind. Then, beneath the roar, I hear something else. Knocking. 3 sharp raps on the shelter door, barely audible above the storm. Then 3 more, louder, more insistent. I freeze, stare at the door, at the bolt that holds it shut. Someone is outside. Someone is knocking, trying to get in. Rule 4. If you hear knocking on the door during the storm, do not respond. Do not speak. Do not acknowledge the knocking in any way. My heart is pounding. someone is out there, in the tornado, knocking on my shelter door. Someone who needs help, who will die if I do not let them in. But the rules say not to respond. The knocking continues, becomes pounding, urgent and desperate. A voice joins it, muffled by the steel door but audible. A man's voice, begging to be let in, saying he's trapped outside, saying the tornado is going to kill him, saying please, please open the door. My hand moves toward the bolt. Instinct, compassion, the overwhelming urge to help someone in distress. Then the voice changes. It becomes clearer, more familiar, and I realize with a cold shock that I recognize it. It is my own voice, outside the door, begging to be let in. Rule 3. Never open the door until the all clear, even if it is your own voice asking. Especially if it is your own voice asking. I pull my hand back from the bolt, sit down on the cot, press my hands over my ears. The voice continues. Perfect in every way, every inflection, every tone, exactly as I sound when I speak. It knows my name, knows details about my life, knows things that no one else should know. It begs, it pleads, it screams with what sounds like genuine terror as the storm rages above. It says it went outside to check on something, says it got caught in the storm, says it is injured, dying, needing help desperately. It says if I do not open the door, I will be responsible for my own death. I keep my hands over my ears, keep my eyes fixed on the rules painted on the wall. The voice changes tactics, becomes angry, accusatory. It says I am a coward, a murderer, someone who would let myself die rather than face the truth. It says terrible things, cruel things, things that cut deeper because they come in my own voice. Then it becomes calm, reasonable. It says it understands the rules, knows I am just following instructions. It says the rules are old, outdated, based on superstition rather than fact. It says if I would just open the door for 1 second, everything would be fine. I do not move, do not speak, do not look at the door. The voice falls silent. The storm continues to rage, but the knocking and the pleading stop. For a long moment, there is nothing but the roar of the wind. Then I hear something else, a sound that makes my blood freeze, my own voice, inside the shelter, speaking from somewhere behind me. It says my name, quietly, almost gently, as if it had always been there, waiting for me to notice. Rule 6. If you hear someone else in the shelter with you, but you entered alone, close your eyes and do not open them until the all clear. I close my eyes, squeeze them shut as tightly as I can. The voice continues speaking. My voice inside the shelter, moving around me, circling me like a predator, examining its prey. It says it has been waiting for me, says it waited for my grandmother for 70 years, but she always followed the rules, always kept her eyes closed, never gave it the chance it needed. It says it is patient, says it can wait, says eventually everyone makes a mistake. The voice moves closer. I can feel something near me, a presence that displaces the air, that makes the temperature drop. My skin prickles with goosebumps. It asks me to open my eyes, just for a moment, just to see who is speaking to me. I keep my eyes closed. It says it knows everything about me. My childhood in this house, my years away, my grandmother's death, the guilt I carry for not being there when she passed. It uses that guilt, twists it, says my grandmother died alone because I abandoned her, says she called for me at the end and I was not there to answer. I feel tears on my cheeks. The words hurt because they are true and because they come in my own voice, making them feel like self-accusations. But I do not open my eyes. I do not respond. I wait. The light goes out. One moment the bare bulb is casting its harsh shadows. The next moment there is only darkness, complete, absolute darkness that presses against my closed eyelids. Rule 5. If the light goes out, stay still and silent until it comes back on. Do not move in the darkness. I do not move. Do not speak. Keep my eyes closed even though it makes no difference now, even though the darkness is the same whether my eyes are open or shut. The voice continues, still circling, still speaking in calm, reasonable tones. It tells me stories. Stories about my grandmother, about my great-grandfather, about the family history that led to these rules being painted on this wall. It tells me about 1952, about the tornado that destroyed half of Calder, about the shelter my great-grandfather built, and what happened on the night it was first used. It says my great-grandfather learned the hard way. Opened the door when something with his wife's voice asked to be let in. Saw what waited on the other side. Barely survived to seal the door again and paint the rules that would protect his descendants. The voice says the rules are real, says they work, says I am doing the right thing by following them. Then it asks me to open my eyes, just for a moment, just to see who is speaking to me. I keep my eyes closed. The voice grows frustrated, becomes angry, demands that I acknowledge it, respond to it, look at it. I do not respond. The darkness seems to deepen. The cold of the concrete seeps through my clothes. My muscles cramp from sitting motionless on the cot. But I do not move, do not speak, do not open my eyes. Time becomes meaningless. Minutes stretch into hours, or maybe hours compress into minutes. The storm continues above, or maybe it has stopped and something else is making those sounds. I follow the rules. Trust that my great-grandfather knew what he was doing when he painted those words on the wall. Eventually, after what feels like an eternity, the light comes back on. I can see the red glow through my closed eyelids, but I do not open my eyes. Not until the all clear. The voice is still there, still speaking, still waiting for me to make a mistake. I keep my eyes closed, and I wait. The all clear finally sounds. The weather radio crackles back to life. The automated voice returning to announce that the tornado warning has been lifted, that residents can safely emerge from shelter. I open my eyes. The shelter is empty. Just me, the bare bulb, the cots, the supplies. No sign of anyone else, no evidence that anything had been circling me in the darkness. But something is different. The rules on the wall, the faded red letters that had been painted 70 years ago, are brighter now, fresher, as if someone had repainted them during the storm. And there is a new line, At the bottom, a line that had not been there before. It says, Isaac Darnell followed the rules. I stare at that line for a long time. My name, painted on the wall in letters that match the rest of the rules, added to a list that I now understand stretches back generations. I think about my grandmother, all the storms she weathered in this shelter, all the nights she spent following these rules, keeping her eyes closed, not responding to voices that should not exist. She survived for 94 years, raised a family, lived a full life, passed peacefully in her sleep, because she followed the rules. I stand up. My legs are stiff, my body aching from hours of immobility. I walk to the door, unbolt it, push it open. The sky above is clear. The tornado has passed, leaving behind a swath of destruction that I can see stretching across the fields. Trees are down, power lines are scattered, debris is everywhere. But the house is still standing, damaged but intact. I climb out of the shelter and look around at the aftermath. The town of Calder will rebuild, as it always has. The people who survived will tell stories about the storm, will check on their neighbors, will begin the long process of recovery. And I will stay. I had planned to sell the house, had planned to return to Dallas, to the life I had built away from here. But standing in my grandmother's backyard, looking at the shelter that saved my life, I understand that I cannot leave. Not anymore. Someone has to keep the shelter maintained. Someone has to keep the rules preserved. Someone has to be here when the next storm comes, ready to descend those concrete stairs and bolt the door and follow the instructions that have kept this family safe for 70 years. My grandmother did it. My great-grandfather did it. And now it is my turn. In the weeks following the storm, I talked to the older residents of Calder, the ones who remembered the stories their parents and grandparents had told. The tornado of 1952 did not just destroy half the town. It brought something with it, something that waited in the wind, that used the chaos of the storm to hunt. No one knew what it was. No one had ever seen it clearly, but they knew what it did. It learned voices, learned identities, used them to trick people into opening doors, stepping outside, making themselves vulnerable. The survivors developed rules, painted them on shelter walls, passed them down through generations. The rules were not superstition. They were hard-won knowledge, purchased with the lives of people who had not known better. My great-grandfather was one of the first to understand. He nearly died learning the truth. He dedicated the rest of his life to protecting his family from what hunted in the storms. My grandmother continued the work, maintained the shelter, refreshed the rules when the paint began to fade, kept the knowledge alive even as the modern world dismissed such things as folklore. Now it is my turn. I do not fully understand what hunts in the tornadoes, do not know where it comes from or why it wants what it wants. I only know that it is real, that it spoke to me in my own voice, that it waited in the darkness for me to make a mistake. And I know the rules work. My name is on the wall now, added to the list of family members who followed the rules and survived. It has been 6 months since the tornado. I still live in my grandmother's house. I have repaired the storm damage, restored the old structure to better condition, than it has been in years. The shelter remains unchanged. The rules are still painted on the wall, my name at the bottom. I keep it stocked with fresh supplies, check the door mechanism regularly, make sure everything is ready. I have not heard the voice since that night, have not experienced anything unusual during the smaller storms that have passed through. Whatever hunts in the tornadoes seems to require the biggest storms, the most violent weather, the kind of chaos that allows it to move freely. But tornado season is coming again. The meteorologists are predicting an active year. I watch the forecast carefully, track the developing systems, prepare for what might be coming. I have met other families in Calder who have their own shelters, their own rules, their own names painted on their own walls. We do not talk about it openly, do not share the knowledge with outsiders, but we recognize each other. A nod, a glance, an understanding that needs no words. We are the keepers of the rules, the ones who remember what most people have forgotten. I have accepted my role, found purpose in the responsibility that my grandmother passed to me. I am no longer the man who left Calder 20 years ago, who built a life in the city, who thought he had escaped his small-town origins. I am home now, and I will stay. If you live in tornado country, pay attention to the shelters in your area, the old ones, the ones that have been there for generations. Look at the walls. Look for rules that do not make sense, warnings that go beyond standard safety procedures. If you find such rules, follow them. Do not dismiss them as superstition. Do not assume they are outdated. Do not believe that modern technology has made them irrelevant. The rules exist because something in the storms requires them. The voice that speaks with your own voice is the most dangerous. It knows everything you know, can anticipate your objections, counter your arguments, exploit your weaknesses. It is you in every way that matters, except that it is also something else, something hungry, something patient. If you ever hear your own voice asking to be let in, do not open the door. Do not respond. Do not acknowledge it in any way. Wait for the all clear, even if the wait seems endless, even if every instinct tells you to act. The rules have kept families safe for 70 years. They will keep you safe too, if you follow them. Last week, I was in the shelter during a severe thunderstorm. Not a tornado, just heavy wind and rain. I went down mostly out of habit. As I sat there, reading by flashlight, I heard something, faint, barely audible above the storm. A voice, outside the door, calling my name, my own voice, asking to be let in. It said the storm was not that bad, said the rules only applied to tornadoes, said I could open the door just for a moment, just to see that everything was fine. I did not respond, did not acknowledge it, just sat there, watching the rules on the wall, waiting for the weather to pass. The voice eventually stopped. The storm moved on. I emerged to find everything normal, everything safe, but I know it will be back. Know it is always waiting, always listening, always hoping for the chance to get inside. The thing that hunts in the storms has been patient for 70 years. It will be patient for 70 more. It will wait for me to grow old, to grow careless, to forget the lessons that my grandmother and great-grandfather learned the hard way. It will wait for me to make a mistake. But I will not make a mistake. I will follow the rules, will keep my eyes closed when the darkness comes, will not respond to knocking or voices or the sound of my own desperate pleas. I will wait for the all clear, and when the all clear sounds, I will emerge, and I will add another storm to the count, and I will prepare for the next one, because the storms will keep coming, and so will the thing that hunts in them. But as long as I follow the rules, I will survive. As long as I follow the rules, my family will survive. That is all that matters now. That is all that has ever mattered. The rules keep us safe, and I will follow them until the day I die.